Street Fighter V was the first time Capcom delivered a fully rendered story mode in a Street Fighter game, as opposed to some supplementary special edition OVA or something. It had its plot holes, but overall, it's a fun time. Aspects I always enjoyed about fighting game lore were the non-playable characters or NPCs. I always liked seeing how their involvement could potentially hint at future characters we could see playable, or simply adding to the backstory of the main fighters. So instead of analyzing the roster of characters that got center spotlight in this story, I'm gonna go over my favorite NPCs from Street Fighter V's story mode and those prologue missions with the funky artwork. NPCs in the story that were previously playable in another game, like Julie appearing as an opponent and being on the Alpha 3 roster, will count for the list. However, I will only be ranking the characters based on what they did in the boundaries of the story, despite the fact many of these characters are more style than substance, so expect me to dig deep into very minor appearances, but hey, that's the fun of dissecting lore. It probably goes without saying too, but I will have spoilers for the story mode in this video. So with all that out of the way, here are my top 10 NPCs from Street Fighter V's story mode. Number 10. Abel. Wait, haven't I heard this somewhere before? Number 10 is Abel. While I thought Abel had a surprisingly fun moveset in Street Fighter IV, I'm fine with him being unplayable for now and having his story continued. Even though he kind of just shows up and does nothing important on screen, but there is something sort of cool about Abel walking in and saying, "Yeah, I've been helping. Didn't you pick up on the incredibly subtle hints? You know, Guile's prologue and the random dialogue referencing me not by name?" Abel was more necessary for the story to act as a plot device when his psycho power is activated to make him turn on the heroes and give Zangief a chance to be awesome, along with showing how Nash can absorb psycho power with his new abilities. It also confirms the hints of him being a failed backup body for Bison, so that's the closest thing to closure I'll get. How did he even sneak into the base? He differentiates too much from the copy-paste grunts. Do you think we should have let that guy in? He didn't look like one of us. He's wearing the Shadaloo mandated helmet, so he's clear. Yeah, but the rest, there's nothing suspicious about a man who follows our headwear procedures. If this is the first I saw of Abel, I would probably think he's incapable of catching a break. So just existing to exhibit other characters' powers isn't too much of a reason to put him any higher on the list. Number 9. Shibasaki, the Kanzuki head steward. So his design and dialogue were not anything too special, but he's here because a majority of the story mode may have not been able to occur without him being there. While Karine seems to have the strategy to defeat Shadaloo, out of nowhere mind you, Shibasaki seems to have all the information with his info briefs and sets up the transportation. Not to mention he's in charge of contacting the team of heroes. What are they called in this game? I'm inclined to say the World Warriors, or just call them Street Fighter like certain US productions of Street Fighter media. Therefore, Karine may have been too overwhelmed without his presence. Probably not, since the story mode made her seem like she reached the status of a god. I also like that Shibasaki is comedically nonchalant, like he just stands there all stoic when Rashid leans on him. You can tell he's being professional, but his face says, "Ugh, why does she have so many friends?" Number 8. Li-Fen, the girl from the Shadaloo base. I initially thought she was going to be a character that is just meant to fill in a gap, since Chun-Li adopted her sometime before Street Fighter III and this is meant to lead up to that storyline. However, while she is kidnapped since her parents were hackers captured by Shadaloo, she had a greater purpose in the story. She informs Chun-Li of why Shadaloo needed hackers, and she supposedly told Rashid's friend about the command codes that allowed the evil Shadaloo plan to be thwarted. More importantly, she could have actually been the one directly responsible for the rise of Shadaloo. Under duress. She had no interest in destroying the world, obviously. I really just like that scene where Fong uses her to hack the system and power up the black moons that Shadaloo was using. She's like 5. How do you know she's pressing the right buttons? Her face looks like she's internally saying, "What do these symbols mean? What's an IP address?" Number 7. Azam. I feel he might be hiding some type of power. Even though he really just says Master in the story mode, I expect him to be a Goken type. The Elder Master of his master. While the story mode basically makes him a glorified shadow outside of the prologues, we at least see in Zangief's prologue that they are wrestler buddies, so any character that embraces muscle power is good with me. I would have loved to put him higher on the list, but I feel he's a bit too succinct with his lines. However, he seems like the type of character that Street Fighter has plans for when looking for a future DLC. Number 6. Anero. One of the centerpieces of Street Fighter V's story mode was having all of the dolls, or Shadowloo's assassins, in the game. Many were opponents with moveset attributes of Cammy, and their own special moves relating to their overall character that was fleshed out in the Udon comics, or their notable appearances in previous Street Fighter titles. Here though, they actually showed their dynamics between each other, and a bit of their personality, which showed how they fit into the storyline beyond being more than just palette swaps of Cammy, unless you read the comics where you see them do a lot more. For example, in the comics, Anero led a full-on assault to bring Cammy back to Shadowloo. Anero in the story mode did about as much as the other dolls that just got in one fight, so she showed off her one-note personality and exclusive attack, but really, I liked her when I barely knew anything about her anyway. Look at that design! What did I say about her before? If anything, I'd like this one. Her hair looks the most ridiculous. Since she's the leader of the dolls, I'm assuming you gain that title by having the most hair. It's like how the most powerful Super Saiyan had the most hair until Super Saiyan God Super Saiyan changed that. But what made me like Anero beyond her crazy hair is she challenged Karin to an oh ho ho laugh off. That was a highlight of the story mode and a pretty gutsy move, considering Karin is a veteran of the laugh taunt. And of all the tools the dolls use, her attacking you point blank with a megaphone is probably my favorite. Being my favorite of all of Bison's assassins, I would have put her higher on the list if she actually did more things, but I'll save those spots for more quote-unquote developed characters. Number 5. Sean Matsuda. Sean is a great character, but like Abel, I'll be judging him on how he was in the story mode. Sean plays the straight man to Laura's, enthusiasm? So he has a developing personality that seems like it would lead to him becoming a full-fledged fighter in Street Fighter 3's part of the timeline. You feel kind of bad for him since his sister starts a regular conversation with him by wrestling him to the ground when he's just trying to tell her that the group of people who are trying to save the world have arrived. He also calls out Laura, not for her aversion of wearing a shirt as strong as Cammy's distaste of pants, but because apparently she doesn't do Matsuda Jujitsu anymore. It doesn't lead to anything, but it at least showed that Sean has a personality. Besides losing track of where his sister is, Sean also loses his undefined Capcom portable gaming system that does not exist in real life, as Fong melts it with poison. I don't know if I'd be terrified like Sean was, or just annoyed. Do you know how rare those things are? Well, very, since they don't exist. Sean is a character in a Capcom game, playing a Capcom game. That must be incredibly hard to come by in the Street Fighter universe, let alone real life. At least he still has his basketball. Number 4. Ed, the kid that Balrog found in SIN's base in Street Fighter 4. Ed was full of potential in the story mode. He didn't particularly do anything outside of assisting Balrog in his prologue and getting the chest piece from Zangief's chest hair using his levitation psycho power. But that might have been a difficult task to do without powers, considering Zangief is so manly, he has the thickest chest hair known to man. It's really his powers and simple yet fitting design that make him seem like he'll be playable eventually. Assuming Capcom keeps Bison dead, he could be the spiritual successor to Bison since he has some psycho power that could develop as he gets older. He uses it differently than Bison too, so he wouldn't just be a glorified alternate costume. It reminds me of Ermac from Mortal Kombat since he has those levitation abilities and wears a hood. Maybe he'll be part of the next generation of characters since Capcom gave him some spotlight for a character that had no major fan demand. Number 3. DeCapre. Looking back, her Ultra Street Fighter 4 inclusion seemed to be a setup for a character arc with Cammy in the Street Fighter V story. They didn't exactly answer why Cammy and DeCapre look alike though. Are they biological sisters, figurative sisters, clones, a fourth option? They kind of acknowledged it when Jury kicked off DiCapre's mask, and everyone was shocked by the resemblance. I understand that it was a heavy mask, but was it really that surprising? I mean, it's a more believable disguise than Clark Kent and Superman, but they kinda just judged her after that one reveal. They were on the fence after Cammy just knocked out a cop to save DiCapre, but now that we know that they look alike, we are appalled. And all because DiCapre called Cammy Big Sister. It's funny because when she woke up later, she was reminded, "Oh yeah, I want to kill you!" I kind of found that scene funny, but so did Jury, so I'm not alone here. DiCapre came to defend Cammy in the end though, so character arc complete? She hates, then loves, then hates, then loves again. Cliched closure with fickle build-up is still closure in the end. Number 2. Mars. So I didn't really care for Mars that much, but I have to give her credit for doing what any of the dolls could have done by pulling the trigger on rebelling against Shadaloo. More specifically, Fong. If you were to put my hands in the fate of Vega or Balrog, I'd understand, since they have some form of morals. Not the best ones, but they've at least shown mercy at times. Nonetheless, when your fate is in the hands of Fong, well, first it should melt on contact, but in the figurative sense, it's like Waluigi deciding if you live or die. You literally cannot predict what he'll do to win, and they're both tall and purple. That being said, Mars gives the big speech when Fong's psycho power controller to overpower the dolls is broken. She gives the kind of epic yet very cliché speech about how they are people, not puppets. Then she does the smartest thing you could do against Fong and make him hang for his life with his hands over a fan blade or pit of fire. It's a high lethal elevation. It was cool when Fong was hoisted by his own petard as the poison eats through the only thing he's holding on to save his life. But he survives, so it was kind of pointless. I'm not sure why Mars got that role, but hey, it made her stand out. She hits you with a laptop for an attack, which is kind of counterproductive if you needed to do research on your opponent later, but she also shared her sandwiches with Birdie, so that was nice. Not sure why Karine gave this meek girl the same amount of food as she gave this tall, rotund man for lunch, but at least Mars understands his struggle. Before number 1, here are a couple of quick honorable mentions. Rashid's unseen friend who helped dismantle Shadaloo's computer code, symbolized by a chibi sprite of Rashid as an extra "haha, beat you," and Peter, the cop Cammy beat up to save DiCapre from being arrested. I'm convinced this was a joke fight since apparently Peter had the lowest health of all opponents, only has a baton swing striker style as a special move, and it was just a comedically unnecessary fight. What's more funny is he has a backstory and official artwork, giving him more legitimacy as a character in the lore. On to number 1. So many of the NPCs in the story mode suffered from the same problems, being they were fun cameos or 2-minute character arcs for Street Fighter fans, and they could pique player interest for future DLC. But one character didn't leave me feeling like big questions were unanswered. If you played the story mode, it may be obvious. Helen or Colleen. Now you may think she just stood around and had everyone else do something in the story mode, but without her, the story mode may have been missing half its characters. She got Urian to give her what she needed to revive Nash, brought Nash back to life, gave him absorption powers, recruits Rashid with a common goal, got Jury to join the team even though she's more of a "no, I'll do everything on my own" character, and helps lead to the end of Shadaloo as her own creation of a semi-zombie Nash, uses all of his might to kill Bison and his, he's unharmed. Whoops. Well, at least she informs Gil about the actual defeat of Shadaloo so we can lead into the plot of Street Fighter 3. She was an exposition machine, which are characters I don't really like, but in the context of who she's explaining the Black Moons and Nash's revival to, it at least made sense why she had to explain everything. It was also a nice little mystery finding out who she was. Even knowing about Colleen and Gil's whole organization, I didn't know if Helen was simply going to be a pawn or an unrelated character that would segue into the Street Fighter 3 plot. There was actually a bit of mystery to who she was, and I was legitimately surprised to find out that Capcom made Colleen a legitimate character. Part of the reason I actually kinda wanted Gil in Street Fighter V is that I always found it funny that he was this god who had a pretty normal looking secretary with a funky hairstyle. Roll the flashback. He also has a pretty normal looking secretary. It shows the businessman side of Gil. Like, before a fight he can be all, "Colleen," that's her actual name. "Colleen, cancel my meetings for the morning." I like how Helen transformed into Colleen's appearance at the end. Not sure if that was meant to be symbolic or if I'm just looking into the aesthetic too much, but I'm glad Helen gave Colleen some relevance. So there you have it. Those are the characters I think used their spotlight time well in the story mode. So what did you think? Agree? Disagree? Are there any NPCs from the story that I did not talk about that you like? Are there any characters, major or minor, in the Street Fighter universe that should have gotten some form of cameo or something else in the story? Let me know. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next video.